This is what we're using to make this wine. We've got 4 pounds of blackberries. You can use either fresh or frozen. We've got about a gallon of water, 4 pounds of sugar, 1 lemon, packaged wine yeast, pectic enzyme. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. Straining bag is optional. Something to ferment it in, primary fermentation. A demijohn, carboy, jug. Use your own word that makes you happy. Airlock and also a hydrometer. All right, first thing we need to do is that we need to rinse off these blackberries. Get in there. If you see any leaves or twigs or stems or whatever that doesn't look like a blackberry, now would be a good time to, what have we here? Something like that. All right, good enough. Back. Pour that in there. Oh, they look good. Now then, we've been boiling that gallon of water earlier, and all I want to do at this point is just pour in enough. Just pour in enough to cover the berries. And we're gonna let that sit until the temperature comes down a bit, quite a bit. Room temperature would be nice. And then we'll mash up the berries and start the process of putting them in the fermenter. Okay, now that the temperature has come down a bit, it's still pretty warm. But I think now would be a good time to go ahead and first add all of that sugar. The warm juice is going to help dissolve it. And 2, we're probably going to mash up the berries a bit. Let me zoom in just a little bit so we can see what's going on. And may as well just dump it all in there. Alright. And just go ahead and dissolve it in there. Helps to have a nice good size pan that you can do all this in. Alright. Now I think we're just going to mash up a couple of these berries just to help the process out a little bit. Now, if the berries aren't mashed completely, that's no big deal. Everything is still going to work. The end result is going to be blackberry wine. But if you got a minute and you don't mind going through the effort, and you still got a potato masher, not a potato ricer, not a food processor, not a blender, not a stick blender, and certainly not your feet, and just go ahead and mash these berries up any way you can. Back of a spoon, whatever you got, that will get the job done. Go for it. Alright, I think that is quite enough of that. Now all we have to do is go ahead and let it cool down just a bit more. You know, now that our blackberries have come down to room temperature, or it's a little warm, but it's cool enough, we can go ahead and juice our lemon. The lemon is acting as our acid blend. If you've got acid blend, then please, by all means, go ahead and use it. But for those of us who are trying to keep it as simple as possible. And go ahead and juice that bad boy. And let's just go ahead and pour this in. The blackberries. Making sure we strain out any seeds. Which, if you're using a straining bag like I am, I'm going to. It's not going to be that big of an issue. But if you're not using a straining bag, then yeah, you want to try and do your best to keep those seeds out of there. Give that a little stir. Now then, once again, if you're not using a straining bag, if you don't have one, it's no big deal. It just won't be as clean of a cleanup later on. But if you are, you go ahead and get this process started. Alright. We're going to tie this off. By the way, this is a 1 gallon straining bag. If you're looking for a straining bag, I would strongly suggest getting a 5 gallon straining bag, or at least a 3 gallon straining bag if you can find it. Okay, it's in there. That's that. Next thing we want to do, wash up here a little bit. Now, if you're using peptic enzyme, we can go ahead and put that in now. If you're not using a peptic enzyme, you can go ahead and pitch your yeast. But since I am using a peptic enzyme, what's left of my peptic enzyme, in fact, I don't even need to measure it because I'm like running out. Enough for this batch. I can just go ahead and sprinkle that in. Time for a new supply. That and some more yeast. Okay. Where's my spoon? Because I want to give this a stir. Incorporate that in there. Alright. All I have to do now at this point is just put the lid on and just give that 12 hours to do its thing. After that, then we can pitch our yeast. We have a 1/4 teaspoon of yeast that we're going to be using. And as always in my wines, just going to sprinkle this out around as much as possible. Put the cap back on. And for the most part, that is going to be that. Every day for the next 3 days, we're going to go ahead and just give it a stir. Make sure that all the blackberry pulp is being fully incorporated. We'll let the pulp stay in the mixture for a good 7 days, and then we'll go ahead and rack it into our secondary carboy. I do have 2 observations I need to make about this recipe. After taking my original gravity reading, I ended up with a gravity reading of 1.152, which is pretty high. I think the correction that I'm going to make there is that instead of using 4 pounds of sugar, 3 pounds of sugar would have been more ideal. If this thing goes to dry at 1.152, it's looking at a potential ABV of about 20%. Now, yeah, I like my wine a bit on the strong side, but 20%, that's kind of strong. I can handle it because, I'm a man. But 20% is a bit high. The other observation is that when adding the sugar, instead of just dumping it all in there, I should have dumped in half. And they made adjustments based on the gravity readings that I was going to get at each step, and then simply adding additional sugar until I got to a point where I would have been more comfortable with. I mean, I can handle the 1.15 too. I mean, heck. But I'm just saying, if you're making this at home, you might want to start with 3 pounds of sugar, and you might want to start taking your gravity readings at even somewhat less than that, so that the wine is going to end up being where you like it. Beyond that, give this a daily stir for the next 3 days. Make sure everything is incorporated. Put it in the carboy in about a week. 3 months minimum, 6 months probably. This wine will be ready to drink. So there we go. Now then, 6 months ago, if you saw my video, you saw me make my first batch of blackberry wine. Now, in that video, there was a mistake that was made. And I pointed this out in the comment section, and every time I've got a chance to point it out, I make it known that the original recipe called for 4 pounds of sugar. Okay, like a dummy, I put in 4 pounds of sugar. It should have been more like 4 cups of sugar, and had I used a hydrometer, I would have known that while I was adding the sugar. Believe me, I have not made that mistake since. I was able to correct the mistake later on by diluting the musk. When it came time to bottling, basically adding a cup and a half of additional water to help, let's just say, thin it down a bit and help bring down the AVB level just a little bit. Now, as far as the AVB level is concerned, this one came in at 20.6 after I finally got it down to that level, which is still pretty potent. The original wine yeast that I use, the Premier Classique, was only supposed to be rated at 18% AVB before it was supposed to give it up and move on to the next life. But no, it ended up being quite high, which I don't mind. If I just want something with alcohol, this will definitely do it. But again, there was a mistake, and I just want to point out that if you're adding sugar to your wine or adding sugar to your musk, use a hydrometer so you'll get the measurements to your liking initially. I don't mind it being a sweet wine. I mean, I was going to back sweeten it anyway. I mean, I like my wine semi-sweet for the most part. So this one turned out okay without me having to do some additional back sweetening. But that's not a method that I prefer using because you're kind of guesstimating what A, the AVB level is going to be, and B, what the sweetness level is going to be. I'd much rather have it go dry and then back sweeten it, or do step back sweetening it to get it to the level I want before I put it in the bottle. So that's where we stand with this particular bottle of wine. Now, the last time I had a chance to actually taste this wine was when I was bottling it, and I was trying to thin it down a bit so that it would be drinkable. And that basically meant using a little 3-ounce Dixie cup and just putting just enough down at the bottom just to make sure that I could taste the amount of sugar that was remaining after trying to water it down a bit. So I haven't really tasted it in about a month or so. So this would be a good time to do the tasting now and to get right down into it. Oh, at some point, you guys will eventually start seeing me use a regular waiter's corkscrew, but as long as this one still works, then that's the one I'm going to use. All right, let's see what we got here. Well, although it is clear, there's just a tiny little bit of haze in there. Yep, just a small amount of haze. Blackberry smell is definitely definitely comes through, as does the alcohol. I would probably say the alcohol has a slight edge over the aroma of the blackberry. The blackberry taste is nice and strong. Wasn't really affected by the thinning down that I had to go through. You don't really get the strong alcohol that's actually in this wine. Uh, you get it when you're inhaling it while your nose is in the glass. It's not overpowering or anything. The wine itself, at 6 months old, like most wines that I've tried, have made and tried at 6 months, still has that level of harshness at the back end, which really only signifies to me that it does require at least another 3 to 6 more months to finally finish. It's got a good mouthfeel. I like the viscosity level. It's just right. For one, really don't, and this is just me personally, I really don't care much for thin wines. I like wines that have a little bit of body to them. So this comes out okay. It's still a bit on the sweet side. This is not a dry wine at all. I didn't have to back sweeten it. I wish I can get my hobby down to the point where I know how much sugar I can add at the front end, which yeast to use at the front end, so that I'll have just the right amount of residual sweetness at the back end. I'm not there yet. All in all, it's not bad. Given more time, it's actually going to be pretty good. Yeah, given more time, this is actually going to be pretty good. I mean, it's drinkable now. It's drinkable now. But I want to go for that smooth finish at the end. So yeah, I'm going to give it more time. Definitely, you'll be seeing this at the 1 year tasting. By then, as far as I'm concerned, after 1 year, all the wines are going to be all said and done. Is it something that I would make again? Well, I mean, it's not bad now, but I really want to wait until that 1 year for this particular wine. I mean, I don't really think it requires a full year before you get the full ripeness of this bottle of wine. But yeah, I think given a year, as with most wines that I seem to be making, that should just about do it. I don't think a year and a half is necessary for this particular wine. A year should do it. It's funny, also at the very end, is just there's a level of dryness, which is surprising. I mean, it's sweet. It's definitely a sweet wine. It's not a dessert wine or anything. It is on the sweeter side, but at the very end, apart from that harshness, small level of harshness, there is that certain level of dryness that hits you at the back end. This is not bad. This is not bad at all. Let's see, I'm making a pizza for dinner tonight. I think this will pair well with it. Pizza from scratch, by the way, not frozen, not calling up delivery. But yeah, I think this will go well with pizza tonight. So there we go. Blackberry wine, 6 month tasting. AVB level of 20.6%. Good stuff. But definitely, yeah, requires at least another 3 to 6 months before this wine is done. So with that being said, that will be that for this video. See you on the next one.